one of my favorite songs, the Soul Jazz Orchestra with People, People. They right out of the deepest part of Canada. They're a world music band, and I just love their music. This is from their 2008 album, Manifesto. Well, I'm a very happy camper today, and so should you be. Why? Because we are able to connect the way we used to, and then some. We have a new number. This is in addition to our regular calling number. So let me give that to you right off the bat. It is 646 922 8391. 646 922 8391. And of course, when we start talking to each other, the old number is just as good. 888-874-4888. Our good old friend, 888-874-4888. I must say thank you to our tech people who have been working very hard to get us together here, as the song says, get it together. They got us together, and I thank them for the extraordinary job they have done in moving the station, but most importantly, the guts of the station, and allowing us to be fully functional once again. So I'm very thankful, and I'm the happiest person today. No one is happier than I am today. So there we are. Again, the new number, which is in addition to the old number, is 646 922 8391. And that is in addition to our regular number, 888-874-4888. So we could accommodate even more people when the time comes to call in. Well, today's a kind of a test. And let's see how you perform on this test as the experienced political analysts that you are. Let's see if you get it. Well, the big news has to do with the federal government, specifically under the direction of, at least this is what is being said, of Jared Kushner, one of the president's many family advisors, who allegedly had worked out this deal, encouraging the acceleration of what is known as the First Step Act of 2018, which helped to bridge the gap and to, in some cases, completely overcome it, because so many people were incarcerated for federal crimes, most of these crimes having to do with drug-related offenses, and they were brought before federal court, convicted, and sentenced to very long sentences. The news is, and this Trump wasted no time in boasting about this accomplishment, that more than 1,000 inmates, it is said that at least 93% of them African American, 91.3% of them African American, were able to benefit from early dispositions of their sentences because of this intervention by Jared Kushner that allowed inmates who have served a substantial portion of their sentences and who over the years, and in some cases it ran decades, who over the years basically committed no further crimes, were not violent and so forth, and they were able to benefit from it at that rate. 91.3% African American, 3.8% Latinos, and this is seen and being touted by the Trump administration. Trump wasted no time in boasting about the effects, the positive effects that Jared Kushner's intervention, that is to say, the Trump administration's intervention, has had for people who essentially were thrown away into this justice system. Okay. Now, we're not here, the quest here is for you to properly place this event in historical and political context. How are we to understand this development? And, I know many people have problems with giving praise to the Trump administration. That's okay. What is important is if you can express and properly place this development in perspective. Can you do that? And make a good argument as you go, because there is something extremely important to understand about this issue, understand about this development, and we need to put it back, not just lift it out of its context, but when put in proper perspective, in the context in which it belongs, how then do we see this? Can you do that for us today? 888-874-4888. Our old friend is standing by to accept your calls, as well as the new number, 646-922-8391. I want you to put your brain into this today. You're not just answering a question casually. You're telling us, like any historian would, you're giving us the proper perspective on this development. It's a big deal. At least they're making it a big deal. And we have to admit this is a substantial development. But seen in perspective, how are we to view this? What are the underlying issues here that have never been addressed? I'm looking for that kind of analysis. You had a little rest, and I don't want you to get lazy. I want you to be able to keep your brain working, and in so doing, help us keep our brain in gear as well. What is the significance of this development, especially to the affected communities? Yeah, you're getting nervous, aren't you? You're getting nervous, but you're brave people. Take a shot at it. How do we properly interpret this development in the context of our reality? We have a reality. And what is the best way to interpret this development? Veronica from Brooklyn, you start us off.
Good day. Hello.
Hello, Veronica.
How art thou? Peace and blessings.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I take it in the context of the convict lease law, which, or even going back to the beginning of how the police department started, and moving forward to today, many of the people that should not have been arrested in the first place, is one. There's something called conspiracy charges, where the example I'm going to give is you may go to college and you bump into someone from your past that you have maybe went to high school or grade school, and you exchange numbers. Hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in so long, etc. How's so and so? And this person may have said, I'm going to rob a bank. And in the context of something as recent as 2016, with the Eastchester houses in Bronx, New York, they arrested every Black and Spanish male between the ages of 12 to 36. Of course, they later let a few go. This was on BAI as well. They raided them at 4 a.m. in the morning, said they were all part of a drug dealing. They were all drug dealers, every single one that lived there, that were Black and male Hispanic. Because of some parents fighting back, saying, my child works 2 jobs. When did he have time to be a drug dealer? And they are still sitting in New York City jails today at Rikers.
Okay. I want you to bring us directly to your point.
Well,
you started giving us
Mr. Obama
context.
is
Tell
the
us what
one
it
that,
is.
yes, Mr. Obama did the early release of these incarcerated people that were over-sentenced, thrown in prison, and some of them should not have ever been there in the first place. Oh my goodness. I am going to, oh my gosh, I shouldn't name names.
What I'm trying to get at, you're doing very well in giving us some highlights, very important highlights of the consequences of these actions. But I'm trying to appeal to the analyst in you, and I'm looking to you to tell us how, from your vantage point, with this kind of detailed information that you have, how, therefore, do we interpret the news of this great development?
I would say it's fake news. It is giving credit to someone. Well, they're giving credit to someone who has had nothing to do with it. Mr. Obama released these prisoners, early sentencing. I happen to know a few that were released because of this incident, and they were innocent. I can also talk of things of Central Park 5 in context. So this not only causes gentrification and the destruction of the Black family, and Spanish-speaking families, it is a direct attack and trying to get votes for this man for something he did not do.
All right. Well, you got us off to a good start. But I was hoping you would put us a little bit closer to, and you did. I mean, let me first commend you for doing a very good job. But we need to get a bit closer to the relationship between, and you did that. You put us on the table there now. Between policy and effect. And this is really where we need to concentrate. Never mind all the news, what a great thing was done and more than
Exactly.
1,000 people are out of prison now, although many of them have served 20 years and more. But we need to look at the deliberate attempt to distort. And I think you did a good job by introducing the idea. Let's see how people follow up with where you started. Thank you. Excuse me.
I,
Thank you, Veronica, for getting
UAM
us
thanks
started
you.
today in fine form. Thank you. Leona from Michigan, you're on the air.
Greetings, Patrice, and greetings to your audience.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I Here's the deal. What my mind is kind of like saying right now. I think it's correct when folks say that President Trump is very good, quote unquote, good with media. He knows how to work it, and for his own benefit. And in addition to what the previous caller said, I was thinking along the lines that this effort was some kind of media ploy to counteract what went down in Trump's role in the Central Park 5 or 7 or 8, whatever the correct number is in that case, and perhaps a response to this new Netflix film or something, which I haven't seen, about the way they look at us or something like that. I'm thinking that might be a part of the equation. And, of course, getting votes in 2020, I think it's a ploy to help that effort. Whatever it's behind this thing, I believe that it is to support and strengthen the system of racism, white supremacy. Now, the other thing, for somewhat historic piece, I'm not saying this right, but I think in the past, based on my limited research, there have been times when shady operators in law enforcement or race soldiers in police uniforms have released black people from prison time and time again, only to set them up to be shot down later or to be killed later. So that element may be a part of it too. So I guess I'm just throwing things on the board.
Well, there is a message here, and I would want to encourage you to proceed with that aspect of it, which you talked about today.
Okay.
As a person of color, where does this put you when you look at this development, which is, of course, being celebrated, it's touted, and so forth? What is the underlying message that you think we all should get about this?
Okay, I'm going to give that some thought. I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Now. Can you give it some thought now?
Oh, give it some thought now. Okay, what is the underlying message behind it? Well, the underlying message is we're in charge. We can do what we want to do when we want to do it. And there's nothing you can do about it, or seemingly nothing you could do about it. The levers of power are doing everything they can to stay in power, and perhaps I don't know the full picture. My understanding is you wanting people to respond to this idea that Jared Kushner's Trump's son-in-law, initiated some idea or process to have some.
No, not really. I mean, that was just a fact of how this thing came about, and Jared Kushner is being lifted up as the great liberator, the guy who did this whole thing and piloted it through. But he's not important here, not from our perspective. What is important to understand? What should we understand with this development? Where should it take us in terms of developing a political consciousness and awareness? You know the answer. I know you know it. And this is the thing. Mm-hmm. When these things are managed the way they have been in this particular instance, we are inclined to react to the moment. And when we react to the moment, we don't see the big picture. We forget the, we forget the big picture. But the big picture is really where the story is.
Mhm. Okay. Well. For what it's worth, but I don't. Well, Massa has freed up a few folks from on the plantation for a minute. To set an example. To set an example for the other enslaved folks, and there's a temporary celebration, whatever, white savior. I don't know. I know this. I believe this, though. It is a move that is designed to keep the system of racism, white supremacy in place. It's going to benefit that, else it wouldn't be done.
Okay.
On that level.
We're getting closer. Thanks to you, Leona, for making your contribution today. Thank you.
Yes.
Bruce from New York, what is the big picture here that we should never miss?
To me, it's simple. I think this is electioneering. I think Trump has taken this action in order to peel off maybe 10% of black vote to get reelected. I don't see there's no other picture that he is. There's nothing more substantial than that. He just wants to peel off enough black votes so that he could win the next election. There's electioneering at work here. That's all.
Okay, granted, and I agree with you. But what is the bigger picture, bigger even than Trump and his intentions?
Well, you have me stumped with that one. I don't see anything more than an electioneering ploy here. That's all.
Really?
Yeah, I don't see anything more than that. I don't think Trump is interested in black people at all. So I can't see any positive import of his actions. He's ignored other issues that black people care about, economic issues. I see it as purely, crass political posturing. That's all.
Okay. Well, I can't disagree with that. I see that as a very legitimate point. But I think we still are missing the big point. And we shouldn't miss the big point. Thanks, Bruce. You put the discussion a little bit further in our laps to consider. So I think I'll try giving a hint here. What is important to understand about this development? Isn't Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and the whole issue of black people, several black people who were incarcerated for all these years, finally getting a taste of freedom and so forth. It is important because this is what is being reinforced. We have no power, little or no power, and therefore our communities, and this has been part of what I've been talking about rebuilding and reconstituting our community and our sense of community, are used at everybody's whim to achieve their specific political agendas. It doesn't matter whether they're Republican or whether they're Democrat or whether they're white or black. They engage in the same game. I'll illustrate my point. To appease white America at the height of the so-called drug epidemic, blacks and Latinos specifically were taken hostage by the system. who enlarged the concept? None other than Bill Clinton, the great Democrat, the great liberal. You will never accuse Bill Clinton of racism, even though he created the largest prison industrial complex in modern history, or just in history. That was his contribution. That was his claim to fame. That was what propelled him to serve 2 terms in the United States White House. Everybody loved him, including the constituency that put him there. He came back to black people having decimated their communities. Nobody really drove home the point that much of the incarceration going on at that time was questionable. The Justice Department did nothing about it. Prosecutors were up to their eyeballs in it. But as long as it produced the results of Bill Clinton being seen as a law and order guy on the backs of blacks and Latinos in this country, it was all right. We had another Democrat, this one coming with special credentials and the blessing of the black community, Barack Obama. 2 terms. His Justice Department failed utterly and completely to address the bedrock issues involved here. Wrongful imprisonment, wrongful sentencing, all to give the impression, and he succeeded, that he's a law and order guy. And he is wrongfully cast as one of those bleeding heart liberals. His own people. The Justice Department of his administration orchestrated, again, the same approach. Didn't veer from it. It compounded it. And now comes the Trump administration. And what I'm trying to point out to you is that we should stop for a minute and see there is no definitive difference between the Democrats, i.e., Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and the Republicans. All of them felt entitled to use and abuse these communities, which they knew couldn't fight back. They could not fight back. Except, a little thing here and a little whimper there. But there was no systemic challenge to any of their doings. And the lesson here is that the African American and Latino communities are perfectly suited as political instruments. The people who are manipulating things, there is no consequence to them. And we have not made it so. Progressives have not made this a make or break issue. They have not talked about this in their electioneering. Because their sense is it's not an attractive issue. And besides which, it has already been established how much in agreement people are, even on the immoral and illegal actions being taken by the government. It doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. It is that the fundamental mentality is agreed upon by all. So when Trump announces, oh, my son-in-law, the visionary, has come up with some great results, we have to see it in perspective. Sure, you could say it's results. What, therefore, has your Justice Department done in connection with the inflow of people in its prison system? What have you done about your prison industrial complex? This goes across the board. And we ignore these things because they're very, very uncomfortable to deal with. Because the secret, I think, is that even progressives and liberals, in their hearts, do not disagree with the disproportionate incarceration of African Americans and Latinos. They don't disagree with it. They have accommodated to this a long time ago. And even in our own communities, we find surprising accommodation to these things that should be questioned. And that's what I was trying to get at. We have to always look at things differently. Our history as a collective is very different from everybody else's history. And so, by necessity, we must examine so-called policies for internal contradictions, because they're always there. We cannot accept automatically that this is a solution when it's so blatantly an effort to sway people, to convince people, to make us temporarily brain dead, as if we have no memory, as if we have no knowledge, no context of these things that literally shaped every step, every phase of our political and social evolution in this country. So what looks like a great press announcement and an effort by the president to wash himself of the stain on him is really supposed to help us return to the issues that matter, the questions that matter, which are nowhere on anybody's agenda, black or white, Republican, conservative, progressive in Congress, not there. Let us just rejoice about 1,000 people who have done at least 2 decades in prison, many of them, already, and were similarly ignored by the liberal Obama administration, as well as this racist and reactionary Trump administration. So Trump proves he's not a racist. Look at the good things he's just done. How could a racist do that? He has proven himself worthy of black support, and we will soon see the circus of people being paraded before the public. Yes, Trump did this for me. He saved me from another 20 years, which I'm not supposed to even serve 1 year of. And that is the relationship I'm trying to get at. And we should always be mindful of it, always. So thank you, Bruce. You brought us very close today. And I appreciate your point because it's true. We cannot dismiss the political ploy here. But as I said, we by necessity must have an entirely different interpretation of events because we have an entirely different history. All right, time to take a break. Let's take a break and we'll come back right after this. You're listening to Leid Stories on PRN.FM, your favorite radio station. And I started out today by being so grateful and so happy that we are able to come back to each other electronically because our staff did a great job in the move. They moved the physical plant, but they moved the guts of it as well. And that took more time and effort and energy than anything else. So they did a good job, and we thank them for that. We have now an additional number that you can call to get on the air, 646-922-8391, 646-922-8391 is a new additional number that you can call, as well as our good old pal, 888-874-4888. Our old number is still available. So that's a good sign. It means that we're moving ahead, and we are, it's, to other people it may be no big deal, but to those of us who've been, in the struggle for a while, this is a signal of progress, and it tells us also that we have greater responsibilities with regard to the growth of the station to support it, because in the end, it is our station. It is our way, our ability to have a way to respond. So thank you, and I note that. All right. I wanted to go on to another subject, but it looks like people want to talk about this one. David from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Utrice.
Hello.
I think this subject deserves more analysis. And as it comes to mind to me, for example, what little Trump has done with this little release of prisoners is like a palliative care movement to me. What he didn't do was to say that he would eliminate these unjust laws completely. They are staying in place. These laws need to be removed completely because, as far as I'm concerned, these laws were started in the beginning of the 20th century and were directed to a large extent to people of color and to their disadvantage. And, that's why they were put in place. So that was a good political move for the powers in control at that time. And as far as I'm concerned, there should be no laws like this whatsoever. So he's letting a few people go, but the point is that these laws should not exist at all. As a matter of fact, they don't make any sense because injurious things are available to people 24/7 throughout the country. People are allowed to smoke cigarettes. They're allowed to eat bad foods that are killing them. They're allowed to do all sorts of things that are perfectly legal, like the consumption of alcohol and any amount that you want to consume is legal in most of the country. So, this makes no sense to me whatsoever. How are you going to lock up someone who decides to smoke a marijuana cigarette and not someone who drinks overproof rum? You see, so this makes no sense at all. We need to get rid of the drug laws and also the bureaucracy that is in effect all over the world, wasting taxpayer money, chasing down people who are involved in the drug business, which makes no sense whatsoever. So in terms of this, I think this analysis, everybody ought to look at this. And it's very important to understand that we should be against all these laws. And I'm not advocating people using harmful substances, but there's so many harmful substances that are perfectly legal. So this makes no sense whatsoever to me.
Well, we also should look at the Democratic Party and its unwillingness or inability over several decades now to deal with the question, because it's not just about the incarceration of individuals, it's about the whole infrastructure.
Yes, well, that's the thing. I mean, right now you have many people of color going towards the Democrat Party, and for some time since the New Deal with Roosevelt, and these people are, a part of the ruling class of crooks, Republicans, Democrats. They're in the same bag. They're involved in doing what is good for the plutocrats and oligarchs at the top who run the country. That's as simple as that. So why should we be in people who are progressive be in bed with their enemy? I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, we need to get out of this. I mean, it's not going anywhere. Why should people so in love with William Jefferson Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama, who are part of the enemy? I mean, we're talking about Democrats and Republicans. They're the enemy of the people, all of the people, regardless of their phenotype that they have, whether it's what we call white or black or red or yellow, whatever. They are for themselves only, not the masses of the people. So we got to get that through our head and get rid of these prisons and all these stupid laws that incarcerate people left and right for ridiculous charges for these drug laws that were created in the early part of the 20th century.
And they allow the really important things that matter, like prosecutorial misconduct. We repeatedly see how prosecutors distort the law, misuse the law, abuse the law in order to get convictions. We see manipulations of juries. We see
that's routine.
a whole bunch of things happening under the color of law, almost always aimed at railroading innocent people. Uh, and it has been going on for decades. My little
Yes.
paper in New York, the City Sun, was first, the first to point out that the people who were identified as the attackers of this young woman in Central Park couldn't possibly have done it. And all we
That's
did,
right.
Peter Noel was the reporter on that, was get out and ask questions, talk to people. What did they know about this case? And the first paper, despite the fact that Donald Trump had called for the execution, the death penalty of all these young men who were nowhere in the vicinity of this alleged crime. The New York
Yeah.
Times could have done it, the same investigation. It's just getting out and asking questions, finding people to talk to, and so forth. And what did we find out? We found out that none of this, none of what the cops were saying, none of what the prosecutor was saying was true.
I feel that the prosecutors and the police in that particular case we're talking about now should be up on charges for obstruction of justice. The police and the prosecutors were obstructing justice by what they did to those boys. And
Well, the
they should be
prosecutor went
charged
on and
with
got a
that. There should be a
really
law
nice job
against that.
teaching at Columbia University.
That's right. That's ridiculous. And there should be a law put in effect that prosecutors would be subject to obstruction of justice. Also, at that time, the police department was totally incompetent. They had the evidence, the physical evidence of this person who was going around and sexually assaulting people, and they didn't even go to that. So, I mean, the incompetence of the police department and the evil that is involved in criminal justice at the prosecutorial level and the police level, and I have people I know who know this very well, is ridiculous. And we're letting them get away with it and still voting for the Republican and Democrat Party. You see, and those who are voting for the Democrat Party, which is on the right, and the Republicans on the far right, I mean, it's just ridiculous, not interested in justice at all. I mean, most people who go to prison have never had a trial. Over 90% of the people in federal prisons or state prisons have to plead to something from crooked prosecutors. So
and the lawyers. Many of the lawyers are there to encourage, not a trial, as you say, to encourage a plea so they could get on with their lives.
That's right. I don't know, maybe 97 to 98% never have one trial at all. I mean, they can't afford it, or they have to get it out of jail and just plead to something and a lesser charge. I mean, it's just ridiculous, this system that we call justice, criminal justice. No, it's not criminal justice. It's criminal injustice, and especially directed towards people of color. That's what it is most of the time.
Well, thank you for expounding, giving us an expanded understanding of things. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you.
You see what happens when you begin to ask yourself. You don't have to ask anybody else. Put your own brain to work. And you see where things like this would naturally lead you if you're thinking. If you haven't yet lost your mind, because believe me, I understand the pressure that we all are under to have a bizarre idea of what is real and what is not real. But we can't afford to divorce ourselves from the reality that we know. It is legitimate. It is correct. We're not making it up. You just heard David recite a number of reasons why we should have our thinking caps on all the time. We heard other people call in. But until we make the concerted effort, and I keep reminding us all, we do not have the same reality. We do not have the same history. Therefore, we have entirely different experiences with all of these institutions. And we must honor what we know, what we have experienced, by staying true to that history. All of a sudden, somebody's going to wave a wand of all the tens of thousands of people incarcerated wrongfully. You let go early because you still are making them. They still have served. Many of them totally innocent. They still have served time. Decades in some instances. Some have even died behind prison walls without getting fair trials and without being fairly processed by the justice system, the injustice system. And I wanted to bring home the point that where political interests are concerned, they make no distinction except they look at how they can use vulnerable constituencies that appear to be unprotected. Nobody's fighting for them. All the African American and Latino legislators in Congress, they haven't seen it fit to make this a priority item. They didn't under Bill Clinton. They supported Bill Clinton. Unquestionable support. Despite that his number one accomplishment was putting people behind bars, black and brown people behind bars for serious crimes without fair trials and on bogus charges. And yet, it was the black community that redeemed this man, gave him and his wife the possibility of the promise of progress, personal progress through politics. And all of that was predicated on black and brown people for the most part. So there's a contradiction here. And we ought to see it automatically. But our memory has been cut short and manipulated and destroyed. The same people who did us in and who continue to use us as, their political resume. And today the media are pretty much in agreement, whether they are the rightist media or the leftist media or the centrist media, they're all talking about this great thing that has happened. Cutting off the background history that is important to put an entirely different viewpoint before us for consideration. But that's not their job. That's not their job. Their job isn't to tell us what is true. Their job is to tell us what is expedient. It is we are the ones who have to exercise ourselves about the truth of our reality. And as I said, if you choose to forget the history of this country, then you're a perfect victim for manipulation and for continued exploitation. You have no brain that will help you understand these things. You cannot easily be conned. You cannot easily be manipulated. And you alone have the right to do that. To interpret our reality such as it is through the experiences we have had, the knowledge that we have, the uniqueness of our position collectively in this country. That's why I say our best defense against everything is reclaiming community, rebuilding community, and standing in our community. Thanks for listening. We meet up again tomorrow. Bye-bye.